Welcome to the OverChurched podcast. People who love Christ but struggle with Christians. Today's special. Losing my voice already.
Yeah.
That's how much talking was happening beforehand. Before we even started the cameras rolling. Before we introduce the guests, I want to shout out this amazing crew. It blows my mind the amazing people that are committed to this podcast.
We have nothing to do with it besides.
But I just want to shout. I'm just even today. It's a different crew a lot each week, but today I'm just inspired. We have a consistent David who's there almost all the time.
Consistent David, King David.
Yeah, a man after God's own heart.
Yes,
talented.
Yes, he is.
Can do the camera stuff. You're right. That's a good
Definitely.
description. And we have have Jonathan, his best friend.
What? My mind is blown right now. We have David and Jonathan.
Just same heart and soul. All they care about is a podcast.
Yeah.
That's it.
I literally think they came to Legacy
to start a podcast.
I mean, not that they don't love God, but I think yeah. And I'm not mad at it. And then we have Mercedes, who's also amazing. She's so good at being super encouraging, but then saying things that you don't know if she's encouraging you or says it with love. So
she's from the Bay, so that's enough said.
Not in a bad way. I start questioning. Am I who am I? And then today we have Kristen.
Yes.
It's her first time on
Yes.
the podcast. She's amazing.
She's amazing.
Such a servant's heart.
She's like a little flower.
Yeah, she's bright.
She's
room. She brightens the room, but she kills fish.
Stop.
I was waiting for it.
Which leads us into our guests.
Yes.
Because they entrusted her their fish that she...
And they're not our guests. They're our friends. They work with us.
They're everything. I mean...
Everything.
But we have the Nunalys here.
Yay.
We have Jonathan.
Happy to be here.
Director of
Happy to be here.
Church.
He got caught up on the episodes just to be on here.
Had to do my homework.
And then we have his beautiful wife, the executive assistant of Legacy, Taylor Nunally.
Who he made a baby mama.
Yeah. Future.
Thanks for having us. All three of us.
All three of
It was
us.
awesome. We finally get out. It took 2 seasons.
2 seasons.
We had to make sure the timing was perfect.
We had to make sure they weren't going to leave us.
And we tried.
This episode come to fruition.
Yeah.
Trying to break them, but
Try
they
to break
haven't broke. Or water will break before or will does.
Anyways, this podcast is about mainly when we first got into church and we were starting with you guys, we kept hearing this common phrase or statement said to us, I should say, of, okay, yeah, your friends are not going to always be with you, or you might lose some friends.
I heard a pastor on the podcast say, don't start a church with your friends.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I mean, you guys have got to witness it too, of it being said. And it was like, wow, okay. So as we're starting and we're building up, this was very discouraging.
So we had to wait 15 months to bring them just to make sure they made it 15 months.
Yeah. But OverChurched podcast is about helping people to feel encouraged, empowered, and to just maybe refine what maybe they thought was what they had to take on that has hurt them, or maybe that they felt like a lot of people that we talk to, pastors don't have friends, pastors struggle with allowing others in this way.
Especially within their own church.
Within their own church, yes. And now we get it. No shade to anybody who operates in this way. I'm just saying that we probably just seen it very unhealthy for the pastors when it comes to this, and leaders, just overall leader. Because we were youth pastors and young adult pastors for so many years. So what was that? Don't have a stroke on me. Good.
I wanted to ask them though, because I feel like I didn't want us to get ahead of it. We'll get to that part. But tell us for the people who may not know, because you do so much behind the scenes, and you do too. And how did you, what was the first question? How'd you guys get involved with Legacy?
Yeah.
How'd you end up here?
Ladies
You want me
first.
to take it?
Yep.
Okay. Well, I'm not really sure that it kind of just happened in God's way of, back to the beginning when we first met Pastor Justin and Pastor Delicia, a couple of churches ago.
Whoa.
First off, that was
Mercedes thing. I don't know.
Look at she ripping off on it.
See, like, I mean, it just sounded like we have bodies under a couple of churches ago.
Anyways, when they followed God's word to move to Arizona, we had the great opportunity of meeting them at an amazing church that we were at the time. And we got the wonderful possibility of serving under them. Is that a better introduction? Yeah. Okay. So,
how old were you though? How old were you when we met you?
I tried to do the math. I think I was 19.
19 or 20, yeah.
Yeah. And so at that time, we just wanted to serve. Like, we just served under you.
Where were you at in life? What were you doing at 19?
I had just graduated high school. It was, it was like 19-ish. I had just graduated high school. We were living our college life of just like baseball, and we were in ministry, navigating family things, just wanting to like find ourselves, find our purpose, I guess, at that point. We had just transferred from like youth to young adults. You guys had come in as the young adult pastors, and that's how we actually really got to know you. Which, total side note, they left their child with us when they went up to a camp like a couple months after moving to Arizona.
We knew you.
The judgment's questionable.
I know.
Questionable judgment, but everyone survived. It was great. It was
Unlike our fish.
you guys are messed for that.
Shout out to Kristen for killing our fish this past weekend, but no big deal.
Yeah.
Anyways,
she's famous now.
How many years
So-
was you alive?
2.5. 2.5.
Dang. That's
All
a
right.
long, I mean, that's a decent, I mean, it could, well, no, it could no longer.
Good.
Okay.
It's all right.
Like, it lasted.
You guys are ridiculous.
Sorry.
Go ahead. Go.
I'm getting you a fish for Christmas.
Yeah.
I won't give it to you.
So anyway, so we were just serving at that time, really just like getting to know you guys as people, getting to know our role. I did not grow up in the church, so that was like becoming an adult in the church, in young adults, finding all the ways, finding all the things. And then meanwhile, he was playing baseball. So I was working, going to school. He's playing baseball, going to school. And then we're just navigating what that looks like to be in a church, serve in a church, get involved, find community in a church. Yeah. So that's how originally we got into ministry. And then back to the question of how we got to Legacy was a God story of, can we go into all of it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So then we had a young adult conference at one point in that church. And
The Get Your Ship Together conference.
that was the birth of Get Your Ship Together. That was incredible. And
Did y'all get married during Get Your Ship Together the first time?
No.
It was before?
After.
It was after.
Oh, it was after.
Yeah. Because I was 22, she was 21. Yeah, it was after.
Yeah.
There's a lot after.
Shout out, we got to marry them.
Yeah.
That was crazy
Goes way
too.
back.
They just
It was like,
did
we're
it.
going to get married
Yeah.
next week.
Yeah.
Chill out. Man. We give you like a 2-week notice, all right? Don't, don't act like it's a couple days.
Crash course premarital, and we got married.
Yeah.
These guys move fast. I'm starting to see a pattern here. But anyways, go ahead.
Just making decisions.
So then,
Get Your
so
Ship Together.
I think at that point I was on camera. I don't do production.
Yeah,
and
you
creative.
were.
I was literally helping. I think I was literally helping Frida by being on camera recording it. I don't know what that decision was, but it worked for the night. And so Pastor Justin and Pastor Delicia had preached a message together for the first time from what we heard. That wasn't like just like a Thursday night young adult sermon.
It was our first one. First time.
First time ever.
Yeah. I think it was one of our first times. Yes. We never did that at the building or anything.
Oh,
Oh,
nice.
okay.
Yeah.
You never know, yeah.
Yeah, it was incredible. If we could find that one day,
I know.
we got to find that. But yeah, so we
might have it.
Oh, maybe. Okay.
Anyway.
No, we need to find that because that's the.
I didn't watch that in the conference. Remember?
Yes, yes.
Shout out Wynn, who's also on the creative team, who also helps with this podcast.
Yeah.
Who literally we met at that conference.
He watched it.
Wild.
Yeah.
Which I still don't know how you found it. Anyway.
I don't either. It's fine. But that was the first time I audibly heard God speak to me. And he literally said, wherever they go, you go. And I did not know at the time what that meant.
That means.
Because we were still at that church for another 3 years.
3 years.
Yeah.
And when that transition time came, the only thing that we could fall back on was wherever they go, you go. And somewhere in there at one point, there was a talk of them moving to Oklahoma. And I literally was like, God, are you sure? Are you positive? Because like,
that would have changed things.
I was like, okay. So that didn't end up happening. And I was like, okay, God, I know you're real. It's good. It's good. It's good. But then we went to the next church together. That was a lot more heavy baseball. That's when we finally went pro. And
I went back to playing.
Yeah. And then you can talk about that. But anyways, we got there and then we got a call one day that during this whole time, actually, I should preface that we pushed and said and asked and begged for the Hamiltons to start a church this whole time.
Let me add to that. You.
Yeah.
I was just saying,
John was never.
She keeps saying us. I'm like,
sorry.
I'm like, you do you, bro. You do you.
Yeah.
I'm so mad. I was trying to find it. And it got lost in
the letter.
You wrote a letter right after that sermon 3 years ago. Yeah. And you were like, it's a long letter, and it was
2 pages.
Yeah, and it talked about how God told you that, and what you believe in the vision God gave you of us having a church and all these things. Oh man, that's one of my biggest things I'm sad about. Is that
it'll show up somewhere. It'll be somewhere.
But that's when I was like, dang,
it's crazy. From that spot right now, I can tell you that we have probably like 10 young adults. Are adults that came from that specific like core
group
of people like Eldon and Lex, Brittany and Mason, Frida and Callie. Yeah. Like there's just like a good handful of people that saw that message that day, that it did something to everybody that day. And I was terrified of sharing that day. Like I remember that was our first time as we were prepping, I was crying. I was like, we've never shared this. We've never said this. And our whole team was like messed up because we didn't prepare any of you guys.
And it was information.
Nobody was
married. And it was like part of your story that you had never shared with people like in life in general. So for that, it was crazy. It was just, it showed who you guys were. It showed what God was doing. But yes, I did multiple times ask you and push. I wasn't really sure like what my place was in that. I was like the encourager. I was like, you know what? I'm going to encourage them to do that. And
you didn't realize what that meant for you.
Absolutely not. I just knew like at some, like, I will go where you go. Like, we'll help watch the kids. We'll push you guys. I don't know. So you guys were very in tune at that time with Holy Spirit, knowing that even if you were to start a church in the future, that it wasn't the time at that moment.
Yeah.
And so I got told no a lot and just like
to the point you're like, stop talking about it.
Because I remember sitting at the table one day during one of the, like, it was a night we were all talking about like what's next or whatever. And I'm like, just start a church. Like, just start a church. Like, start for what we are looking for and seeking for. And you guys were just like, God has not said that. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I was like, it's like shot in my heart. I was like, okay. So then we go to the next church, we serve, get involved, all the things. And then we were gone at baseball 2 years ago and get a call saying like, pretty sure God's telling us it's time. We don't know when this will be, but we know it's time to start preparing our hearts and like praying over what it would be to start a church.
Yeah.
And that was when, like, to this day, you always say, go back to what God last told you.
Yeah.
And I was still wherever they go, we go. So we said,
But that was tough because you guys were in different. It's easy to say that when you're in college.
Yes.
Like, hey, whatever guy wants to go, we'll go. Like, but at that point,
because
no longer in college.
No.
Talking about 7 years later.
Yeah.
Right? 7 years.
Yeah, 6-7 years
so we
later.
get the call, and
from that,
my heart, like I know, I'm like, my heart is like, okay, yes, we're doing this, but we're in the middle, and I won't say too much you can say about baseball. We're in the middle of Jonathan's best season, like highest stats. This was his season, and I was like, oh, I'm not saying anything. I was like, God, you're gonna have to tell him. You're gonna have to tell him yourself. But I told them, I was like, we're in. I don't know what this means. We're in, but like God will figure out the rest. And so that's kind of my beginning of getting into legacy. But you can pick up on that baseball or fill in what I miss because.
Yeah, it's a little bit different, obviously, my side of the story than her side. I didn't have that moment where God spoke to me and said that, wherever you go, we go. But I think working back from planting the church, it's like, I think being naive was a strong suit, I guess, for us. Like you guys know more about like being in ministry full time and things like that. So you knew kind of what you were going to get into. You guys have at least spoken to enough church planners to know like this is crazy. So you have Taylor on one side, like plant a church. It's not that big of a deal. Just plant it. Just start a church. Right. And I'm just like, oh man, whatever you guys do, I'm gonna be there. And so I think, ignorance is bliss when it comes to planting churches, I guess. And I think that's been a strong suit for us as like friends, because you guys have been full-time ministry for years. And for us, it's just, we weren't ever working at a church. We were never like in ministry in that way, except for serving. So for us, we were just ignorant to how hard things were and how difficult ministry is, let alone planning a church. But I'll go back to kind of the beginning of all that. It's, I was in college playing baseball at the time. I'm a year older. So I was at Scottsdale Community College at the time. We had just gotten into the young adults stuff. And the first time I ever attended young adults was when you guys showed up. So I show up and I'm like, this is the young adults Taylor's been talking about. We're hanging out at this coffee shop. It all goes back to a coffee shop.
Good point.
And we go to this coffee shop and, they're like, hey, we're passing off the baton to, Pastor Justin and Pastor Delicia. And I'm like, all right, like, cool, like, whatever. And then I remember just like having a conversation with you guys and I'm like, okay, these guys are real from the Bay Area. Like, all right, cool. And then all of a sudden, Taylor's like, we're going to watch Genevieve for like a week. Was it a weekend?
Yeah, it was like 2
or something like that. And I'm like, I'm down for whatever, Genevieve was like 2 at the time or something. Like, that's crazy. Yeah, she was young. And I'm like, we're in just like college, And so I guess going back to all that, like Taylor's always very vocal about, what God had told her at that time. And I'm just like, all right, like this is my girl. We're dating. We've been together for 5 years at that time, 4 years at the time, 5 years. And she's saying this and I'm like, like, I'm going to go play baseball. I don't know what, like wherever they go, hopefully I'm playing baseball there. But I think as time goes on, it's all the same. You guys switched churches. So we followed you guys there. And then, around that time, I got back into playing professional baseball. So I'll go a little back on that. Played college baseball, went to Arizona Christian.
All-time home runs leader.
Yeah. Woo, woo. That's me. Went to Arizona Christian, played there for 2 years. Like you said, all-time home run leader. No big deal.
2 years.
And only played there for 2 years. And then started pitching a little bit, whatever, no big deal. And played that summer professional baseball in 2018.
Yeah.
Didn't go well, was not good. I quit baseball, started just working like 9 to 5 at UPS in a sales role. I know, it was miserable.
Miserable to talk to be honest.
No, hey, for real. Hey, and get to go on to that, it's like, at that time I came back and I was serving. We were serving at the church we were going to, and I was like, dang, like this is just not it. Like, and to make it worse, the campus that we were going to church, it was right around the corner from my job. So I was like, dude, like I'm right next to my job all day, every day. And the turning point with that was a guy was at my work about 2 rows behind me, and he had passed away over the weekend. And our like management came up, told us, and they're like, hey, this is what happened, but make sure you get your phone calls and your emails done. And we're like, bro, like emails and phone calls aren't that serious, And 2 days later, they had his cubicle cleaned out, his desk cleaned out, and some new person sitting there. And I was like, this ain't it. Like, this is not it for me. So started training for baseball again. And then in 2020, went back and started playing professionally in Chicago.
Timing was great.
I know. Timing was terrible. Quit my job. COVID hit. Couldn't play for like 6 months. It was a mess. But I mean, even throughout that whole time, it's like we knew that, you know, still wherever you guys went, we would go. And ended up playing the next 2 years of baseball. And then as I'm in Idaho, we obviously get that call and you guys are like, hey, it's time we're going to start the church. And for me, still, it was like, all right, I was like, Taylor's going to start a church.
It was not like, oh, we're going to start this church and we're going to like run it with them. It was like, we are going to encourage them and love on them.
Yeah. You really didn't know what that meant. Like, you really didn't know. No. And then Jonathan was very much like, I'm still playing baseball.
Working at a church is never.
The ignorance is bliss.
No,
really.
Like the plan was, we're just going to do baseball life. We're going to be at the church when we're there. We're going to pay for the church because we're going to make it to the big leagues. Like, it was never the world's going to combust and we're going to work at the church.
Right.
But anyways, go ahead.
And so kind of, I mean, along those lines, it's like, I'm thinking I'm going to help out. And like in my head, I was thinking pretty small, like as we'll talk, I'm a super logical, super just like mellow person. Me and Delicia are more alike. And then Taylor and Justin are more like, where they're like big visionaries and like all this. And I'm just like, yeah, I'll help out this little church thing. You know, we'll plant this thing and then I'm going to leave and play ball. Because at this point, like I go out to Florida, I'm having to travel with the Pirates. Like I'm supposed to have a travel with the D-backs. Like everything's going well. And then God happens. And there was just multiple things that happened. And God, like, that was my moment where God spoke through many things. Never anything like audible, but spoke through so many people saying like.
It was audible to me. That was night. So we have a thing like, we never wanted to, because
nobody wanted to say it to John.
Nobody wanted. Hey man, I know you're playing baseball, but I think you should give all that up and just fully pursue building God's church. Because we would talk about like, man, because you at that point, like you said, we're going. You guys are involved in all the behind the scenes things.
Oh yeah,
doing, and we're telling you guys we're learning, and you guys are getting more involved. But I'd be like. And we can see the potential, like, man, like, John could actually be really good at this. And fun fact, John is technically the only person with a degree in ministry.
I have a minor in biblical studies.
So technically he's the only one qualified to even. So we were having conversations like, man, wouldn't it be crazy if John really like went all in? Because Taylor was starting to find her niche a little bit more on the administrative side. But I was like, I'll be damned if I'm the one to be like, hey, bro, give us the bat, keep this Bible, you know?
Right.
And so we went to, so we were having, and Delicia was like, but if you see them, you can speak it out. Like, nah, because if somebody put that pressure on me.
Athlete to athlete. I'm not doing this.
I'm never even want to kill his dream. So one night we just randomly went to, what was it, a
Dream City conference.
And the only reason we went was because one of my favorite preachers of all time, the GOAT, Jensen Franklin, was preaching. And I was like, I just want to hear Jensen.
Yeah, that's all I want to hear.
We weren't going to go the next day.
No.
And at this time, the problem was we had been, shout out Dream Conference. We did.
I was like, we did go the next day. We did go.
The plan was Friday night.
But it was so good we went back, right?
But the crazy thing at this point is we're getting closer and closer to like legacy. Have we opened yet?
No.
Opened yet. But we were getting closer and closer. Mm-hmm. The problem was John was still playing baseball and now he was getting calls about tryouts. So he was feeling this tension of like, he's starting to see the potential of legacy. But he's also seeing the potential of his dream. And I was like, well, let's go to Dream Conference. So we go to Dream Conference and what happens?
All right. So throughout this time, like we're about to plant, right? Like we're having the BLD where we had just gotten done, like having the meetups at Sozo. And so I'm working at a baseball facility from like 8 a.m. to like 5 p.m. working on legacy from like 5:30 to like 8. And then I'm also coaching another team and I'm also training like amongst all this stuff. So it's like all day. It's like baseball, ministry, sleep, do it all over again. And so then they're like, hey, come to this Dream Conference or Dream City Conference. What was it called? On this rock or something like that? Upon this rock?
Oh, on the rock.
On this rock, yeah.
I think it was Dream.
Whatever the conference was. And Jensen Franklin's in there.
You've never heard of him?
And I had never heard of him. I'm super illiterate with like pastors and all the things. I just like, I listen to ignorance is bliss. I listen to certain sermons.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there and we're like second deck, like we're up top and I'm sitting the furthest on the left. So like I'm the closest to the stage and we're sitting there and Jensen Franklin was like, his sermon was Plan B. Was it called Plan B? Plan A, Plan B?
Cut the rope.
Cut the rope. And he kept talking about cut the rope to Plan B. And he stops and goes, I feel that there's someone in here who is an actor or an athlete and is still holding on to that Plan B, but your Plan A is ministry. and to be honest, my initial thought was like, dang, there's an actor in here. I'm like, there's an actor in here, bro, that can't give it up. Yeah. So I'm looking at the stage and I'm like, dang, there's an actor in here. And I look over and Delicia is like staring at me. And I'm like, nah.
I'm like, bro, if you don't think that he's talking to you.
I think that's actually exactly what you said. I think you're like.
Yeah. Oh, she said it out loud. She's like, you don't think he's talking to you?
Like,
and at this point,
nobody wants to say anything. I just leave it up to me. I'm like, are we serious right now?
Yeah.
Like, we are not sitting here.
At this point, like, I'm just obviously in denial. Like, I'm still, I'm playing ball. And he has like an altar call at the end. And I'm like down there, I'm like praying. I'm like, God, just speak to me. Just say something. Like, and there's so many different signs. And I'll get into that. But there was so many different signs that was pointing me toward ministry and pulling me away from baseball. And I was just like, nah, God, like I need you to show up right here. Like, where's my burning bush, And
by the way, that was the first time in 7 years that I ever saw you respond to an altar call, even though I gave altar calls all the time. And that was the first time I ever saw a thug tear. I freaked my heart out for 7 years.
That was a baseball tear, dude. I'm like, no, God.
One altar call or one tear, but that was me being.
He broke me.
If it's anybody, it's Jensen Franklin now.
Hey,
yeah. You said the GOAT. You said it. You said it. But I mean, I'll get into that though. So there was multiple signs that pointed to me going the ministry route. So like Taylor said, like I'm healthy. I just came off the best season I had. When I'm walking off the field though, she never told this to me until I had made the decision to like get into ministry. But when I walked off the field, I closed out the last game of the season. It was game 96. I closed it out. I'm walking off the field and Taylor said that like God audibly told her like, it's done. Like it's not just like not like the season is finished, but like it's finished, like baseball. And for me, I'm walking off the field like I'm the GOAT, bro. Like I'm going, I'm throwing 95. Like we're in this thing. And so, what's funny is when you guys had called first saying like, we're going to plant the church, a couple weeks later, it was in September. You guys had already had the first interest meeting. I was still in Idaho and Delicia had texted me and was like, hey, here's this verse. Like, I think you were like asleep and like, I woke up out of my sleep thinking this verse, thinking of you, like, here it is. Like, whatever you think it means, whatever it means. And it was, Abraham sacrificing Isaac, all the things. And I'm like, am I supposed to sacrifice baseball? Nah, like no chance. Right? So like God's speaking to me like throughout this time. Then the Jensen Franklin thing happened. And then when I went out to try out for the Pirates. So as this whole thing's going on, I'm getting a bunch of offers to go back and play independent professional baseball. And I finally get the chance to go out to Florida and try out with the Pirates. So I fly out there and it's during spring training. They bring me out. I'm wearing like all Pirates gear, Pirates hat. Like I'm just decked out in all Pirates gear. So no one knows I don't already play for the Pirates, right? And I'm walking out to the bullpen to throw in front of like their minor league coordinators and all this stuff. And this super old Dominican guy walks up to me and like cuts me off, like intercepts me from getting to the bullpen and was like, hey, I just want you to know like God's got you and God's got your career. Like whatever happens, like God's got you. And I'm like, okay, like appreciate that, dog. Like, thanks. He's about to catch me throw 95 over here. God's got this career. And I go over there, I crush it, and I have some really good conversations with the front office guys that were watching me throw. And I like still, I'm like, why would he walk up to me like that's crazy? Like that's like the second or third thing that happened. And I leave, and they're like, hey, we'll call you in a couple weeks, like with hopefully good news. And call never came. They actually did call me, and they called me just to ask me how I was doing, if I was still throwing. And I was like, yeah. And they're like, all right, cool. And they like hung up, and I was like, oh, that's dumb. And so there was just so many different things that was happening in baseball that it just felt like God wasn't like opening those doors for me to walk through. but I was trying to force them open, right? But there were so many different little signs where it was like, hey, I'm showing you this door, but like all you have to do is walk through. Yeah. And I know the point in when it changed was Legacy launch. Yep. We had our opening weekend, the 15th. The 22nd, I actually missed the second weekend of Legacy starting because I got the opportunity to throw in front of all 30 Major League teams up in Scottsdale. And I even came back for Takedown. Yeah. So Takedown team, shout out. And so I think it was the third weekend or the fourth weekend. Yeah. You guys had brought up me, Taylor, Ryan, and Laura, I believe. Right. And that's when you kind of told the story of Taylor was saying like, hey, we're going to start this church. Like wherever you guys go, we go. And then Justin like had all the, he told the congregation, he was like, hey, if you've been at Legacy and you've given your life since you've been here, just if you do me a favor and stand up. And like, at first no one stands up. And I'm like, bro, this is whack. Like, what are we doing? What are we doing this for? And a couple people start standing up. And then all of a sudden, like 3 rows of people stand up, like a mom, a dad, a couple kids, like in like 2 rows back to back. And as soon as they stand up, I start bawling, crying. Like just, I'm fighting it on stage. I'm low-key fighting it on stage. And I walk off, I see Pastor Delicia, and I start like hyperventilating, crying. She hugs me. I start crying more. Taylor's videoing me because she had never seen me cry before. And like by that point, I think I'd only cried like 2 times, like since I was like 14 years old. And I like just broke down. I'm like, that was different. Like baseball had never made me feel like that. Yeah. And that was the moment where I was like, I'm going to give it up. Wow. Which was like such a Holy Spirit thing. Cause like my dad's still in baseball. Like he played professional baseball. He's still in it. He's 53 years old. And I'm like, I'm going to do it till I'm 53, you know? And so at that moment I was like, no, I'm done. Whatever you have for me, like you have for me. And I think when you display that obedience, God just shows the way. I think the whole time it was like God was showing me the way. It just took that extra, like he was reaching out to me and I just wasn't reaching back. And as soon as I reached back, it was just so apparent that this is where I was supposed to be. So
wow. So still gets me emotional.
It's
crazy.
And I still didn't see him cry because I was on the.
You did. You got to see him cry at the retreat.
Yeah.
He went
and that's what I was talking about. That.
Yeah. So every time he talks about that story now, he literally like, no, it was. I didn't know whether I was supposed to be emotional or laugh or film or what because I
did not know what to do with herself. I just remember seeing his face on stage and I'm like, he's about to start crying.
Yep.
And I just darted to the side because I was like,
you were there.
I was standing there watching everything.
Yep. And then when I got out of the stage, you were standing there and I was
like, no. Because I felt so bad. I was like, he doesn't cry. Yeah. So it was so
It's crazy.
No.
So now at this point, we're like a month into the church. Mm-hmm. You're like, all right, we're all in. Or you're like, I'm all in.
Yeah. She's been in. Yeah.
She's been
all in for 7 years.
Yeah. But we were also like, okay, cool. So we're going to give you an insane amount of work to do. We're only 4 months old or 4 weeks old. Yeah. Can't pay you. Thanks for turning down baseball money, but you better start selling feet pics or something. No, that wasn't the thing. We did say, Taylor actually said, he was like, I'm so, I don't know how we're going to afford it. I'll sell feet pics.
And he said, absolutely not. I was in for it.
Was like,
it'll be anonymous. Terrible.
But that's how like, we had none of us like had any idea of what it meant to like, we were like, no, what's going to happen.
No.
And so, like that was, to me, that was just a crazy amount of faith to like give up something that was secure and you were passionate about to pursue something that was so unknown.
Yeah.
And not that you weren't passionate about Jesus, but you were like, I could serve Jesus other ways. And
right.
Just, giving up my entire dreams for, based on the gifts that he's given me, because that's always what we can do. We can always rationalize, well, no, he gave me this gift.
Yeah.
So
for sure.
So what was it? What point, what made you guys certain? This is what I wanted to know. What made you sure of like, not just, God told you you're going to go where they go, but like, what was the solidifying of like, okay, we can trust our future with these people who've never done this before?
I'll start off with that. But I think we touched on this a couple of weeks ago. I think we were just talking, but it's you guys are exactly who you guys are off stage as you guys are on stage, right? And we've had conversations with some people, even when we were back in Idaho this past week, of people who are pretty church hurt that are in their 50s that are just like seeing, you know, the pastor told me this when I was a kid and I just like grew up and it all of a sudden like wasn't true. That's not how they were living. And so for me, what solidified it was, you know, we had known you guys for years, and what you guys were communicating on stage is exactly how you lived off stage. And you guys had always been very forthcoming with your failures. Like you'll go on stage, you'll be like, me and Delicia had a passionate disagreement this past week. And it's like, how many pastors are going up there and saying that, you know? And that's not to say that they're not, but it was just really reassuring to us of you guys were always so transparent about, hey, we don't know what this is going to be. We don't know exactly what your role is going to be, but like, this is what we want the church to be. And that was a vision that we could get behind. And obviously get behind you guys just from knowing you off stage as well as on stage. And so I think just knowing the difference that you guys wanted to make within the church, like not just Legacy Church, but overall capital C Church, that was something we wanted to get behind. And I just seeing you guys off stage was just like, these are people that, we can support this for sure.
Well, I appreciate that, but that brings up the next question though, because as I'm cold too now.
Okay, you want to snuggle?
This is such a cute blanket.
I know.
The blessing of having that type of relational dynamic is like we see us as best we can, you know, even imperfectly be consistent off stage and on stage. Yeah. But that means you also see like you don't. Everyone else here is, man, me and Lisa had a passionate disagreement. You were like, I was in the office when they had that. You know, like,
boy, it was passionate.
Yeah. So like, and that's what a lot of pastors have warned us about. It's like, oh, you can't you'll get too close because then it lose respect because they see your humanity and you know how to lead and all these things. What's been the hardest part of leading a church with your friends?
But with answering that, you have to think about the audience who maybe they saw the humanity in the pastors or the leaders, like, but then that's what made them leave and or get hurt. So speak a little bit to that too, of like, when you do see those things, how do you guys process that?
You ready to go?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, I'm back up for 1 second though, because about like the question, whatever it was before about how you knew what we were saying. I also think like we were so committed to creating what we were missing. And so
that's good.
Whether the days were hard or not, it was like we didn't know how we were going to get there. We didn't know financially, we did not know how we were going to get there, but we knew what we wanted and what we were missing in a church. We were able to create that.
Yeah.
We had a free canvas, a blank canvas. So I think that goes into now of how did we do it with friends? Like, so many people wanted to scare us off of that and be like, literally people will be like, your church is going to fail if you do it with friends.
Yeah.
And like,
they told us that at art conference. How many people were like, we were at art conference and people were, shout out, art conference is going on right now. And people were like coming out to us and were like, you guys and you guys? Yeah. And you guys are friends? You guys have known each other for how long? Dang, never seen that. Like people were like shocked.
Yeah.
And we're like,
and so it was kind of this like,
are we crazy?
Like,
should we?
Yeah.
Are we okay?
This,
Am I okay?
Pretty sounding.
But it was like, no, we're gonna do it. We're gonna beat the odds. But anyways, so then when it comes to the time of like everything in the beginning, ignorance is bliss. It's all great. Everything's happy. And then it comes to the time where, again, all four of us have completely different personalities.
Yeah.
To where it's like you get into a meeting and you actually disagree. You are, let me back up. The biggest thing for us that we have all four decided on before we launched is that, one, we're friends first.
Yeah.
And two, that we've done what I feel like we've done a very good job of is, depending on the conversation or depending on the question asked or depending on the need, we're prefacing that. Are we asking that in a place of ministry and work? Or are we asking that in a place of like home and friend?
Yeah.
And I think that has been the healthiest way that we've been able to see us fight in the office, us passionately disagree in the office, you guys passionately disagree in the office, because we know that at the end of the day, like there are ministry disagreements, but that stays at the office, like that stays at church. And I think your question to people seeing that, and that is why they leave the church, is I don't think that they see healthy disagreement, because at the end of the day, we are all in the same understanding that what we're agreeing and disagreeing on is the future of the church, like what God's asking us to do for legacy, to grow the kingdom.
Yeah.
And so as long as like the basis is all understood between the four of us, is I think how we've been able to like disagree in the office and go out to dinner as friends that night.
Yeah.
I don't know. You want to add anything?
No, I'll add to that. It's any of the disagreements that we ever have, or any, even starting the church, we all have this vision for what we want the church to be, right? We all have this.
Pretty low.
Like, you start this little church thing. We all have this vision for what we want the church to be, right?
Yeah.
Like, you guys say, hey, we want to serve the unchurched, the de-churched, and the overchurched, and that is what we all agree on. How we get there is where we'll disagree, just because we have different experiences.
Yeah.
Taylor and I don't come from a ministry background. You guys come from a long ministry background. I've worked corporate, she worked corporate, we work for families. You guys have done many different roles. So it's like, we know that that's the standard, and we know that that's the goal.
Yeah.
We might see it differently how to get there, but the finish line is still the same.
Yeah.
So even though we disagree because we just see it differently on how to get to that same goal. It's not because the goal is any different for any of us, but I think where we've seen a lot of these things go wrong, and that goes back to even some conversations I had in Idaho with some of our friends who are church hurt, and I think people tend to forget that pastors are people, right?
Yeah.
If you go throughout the Bible, you look at David's life, you look at anyone's life in the Bible, look at Moses' life, like a murderer turned into a prophet. You know what I'm saying? And it's, people forget that these characters that you follow and these characters that you are just like, those are amazing people of God, they fell short numerous times, like worse than any pastor typically could. Like, we're talking murder, we're talking like rape, you know what I mean? And so, exactly. And so people tend to idolize pastors or push them up to the standard of an unachievable standard, right? And a lot of pastors tend to break when they're put up there, and that causes a lot of church hurt. And so I think if we just remember the vision, we remember the goal, it's to serve people. Yeah. And regardless of, a pastor hurting you, regardless of, someone who's your friend that they didn't live up to a certain standard that you had for them, that doesn't make God any worse. That doesn't make the church any worse. So the church that God meant for it to be any worse, If you have a friend and a friend does you wrong, you don't stop believing in all friendships, or like if you have a girlfriend or boyfriend that cheats on you, you don't just completely give up on dating for life. Typically. And so like, why, when something happens in the church, why do we give up on God? Why do we give up on the church? It's not the church that did it to you. It's typically a person within the church who is all flawed, right? God obviously appointed you to this position to shepherd this flock. Yes. But the shepherds have, their own flaws. So I think that once you keep that in the front of your mind of, so if we see you guys disagree, it's like, you guys are human beings still, the same thing. So
one thing I heard a lot of pastors say is like, you have to have boundaries, because if you cross boundaries, then, you can't lead someone who views you as a peer, or you can't plead on the people you're leading. Don't plead on them you're leading. Your friends that are outside the church, all these things. And our thought from the beginning has always been, we want to be a part of a church that we actually enjoy. And we want to, like, what's the point of building a church if we can't enjoy life with people we're building with? Yeah. That was always our thing, like relational leadership.
Because you used to hear, like, we used to be told, like, as from the pastors to the staff. And then granted, the staff will grow, legacy will grow, and they won't get to know us the way you guys know us, for sure, right? So we can only do our best to being... at the end of the day, if they come in as staff, they're going to be staff. They weren't our friends first. Yeah. Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Right. So that's going to be a different dynamic for sure. So I think that it's fair to say that when you come in as staff, you're not technically like that friendship. Totally. Relationship. So because we've gotten it twisted where we've been a part of staff that were like, we love you, and you guys, we love being with you guys more than
our own families.
And we would be like,
time out.
Like, hold up, we don't even spend that much time together. That can't be true. Like, and we would question it a little bit because we'd be like, how the heck does that work that way or whatever? So we want people to feel like we're humans
Yeah.
and not put us in this pedestal of, but then also we can't force like a friendship or feel that obligation, right?
And everyone's different, right? So like, what my point with you guys is that I do think there are pastors who try, like we started with our best friends and all these things, but they got burned or they got hurt.
Yeah.
And then it jades in the same way people get OverChurched, pastors get hurt. The same way. And so there's this PTSD of, well, I got to kind of keep my guard up and I got to keep distance and boundaries and all these things. And so I get it. But our thing is like, that's not what I want to start off by being. Sure. God forbid I end up like that. I definitely don't want to start off with like these things. But the thing that makes it complicated when it comes to boundaries is like, you think about all the, so we were your pastors before we were your friends. So we start off discipling you guys, pastoring you guys. So that was the origin story of the relationship. Then as you guys grew older and you started, things changed. We became more friends. We became the godparents of our son. And then, but now you're in this dynamic where it's like, okay, they're my pastor. But now they're my boss. Like God plus the church, you're able to like now hire you guys. Now it's like pastor / employer / friend. I don't know why I'm like this when I'm saying slash. So it's like pastor, employer, friend. How do you guys navigate things when it's like, how do you get like when there are like we've had hard conversations in terms of, we've talked all hard things like even when it came to like hiring, like, we've had to have the hard talks in terms of, well, since you guys went who started with this, does that mean that no matter what, you'll always be, and we had to have the conversation like, no, like there might be a point where y'all have other bosses who aren't even just us, like,
but that's taking vulnerable conversations.
For sure.
But that's what I want to help process is for the person or for the pastor who is like, no, I got to keep everybody at distance because they can't handle it. How have you guys handled processing that multiple facets of relationship? Because I've never felt dishonored, disrespected. I've never felt like you guys haven't. We've had hard conversations, and it's never, when we go out in public, it's still, hey, Pastor Justin, this is what we're doing. You know what I mean? Even if you don't agree with it, even if it was an idea that you were like, I do not think we should do this. Like, I know. We're going to do it. How do you navigate that?
I think there's a level of maturity on both ends, and I think there's a level of vulnerability on both ends. So, right, where we trust each other enough to have those conversations and understand that we don't have to necessarily hold back. But at the end of the day, we have that respect for you guys as our pastors, right? Because there is a clear hierarchy of what's going on. And I just think it takes a vulnerability from you guys for sure, and authenticity from you guys to open yourselves up to potentially being wronged by us. Because like we could for sure. But I think it takes some maturity from us to you guys to us to be able to have disagreements, be able to know things, be able to, build and plan with you and have access to you guys' lives and things like that. And still like you trust until you can't trust. And I think that I feel like every pastor should have some sort of safe place. And I think that that's probably why they go outside of relationships like this, because they've been wronged. But when you find the people that you can and trust, there's no reason not to until you've been proven wrong. You know what I mean? Which is, it puts you in a vulnerable position, obviously. And I understand all the pastors. I understand the people who are in ministry who are hurt by it and who are wronged by those who they did trust. But again, I guess it's the same thing as being, church hurt, even from a pastor point of view, is like, I'm church hurt by someone I trusted. Same as from down to the top of being church hurt by a pastor. It's you still need those people that you need to trust,
Isn't that crazy real quick that we have so many people like in the congregation who feel so church hurt, but yet forget how much church hurt the pastors really are. The leaders.
More church hurt than any person in the church.
But they have to just keep going. Like they don't get the option to just leave church.
People never understand that concept, just coming to church and just like, but you're hurt by one person, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. Maybe. Could be more, but most cases it's one.
Two.
Yeah, two people.
Let's say three. Let's say there were 3 people. You gave 3 strikes.
Let's say 4. Let's say 5. I'm just kidding.
Regardless.
Yeah.
Imagine a leader or a high-level leader in the church that is a pastor, executive, whatever. Like, how many more people they truly has truly hurt them and left them?
How many people they invited into their home, thought they were, said, "Hey, I want to be friends." They tried to have it. And then something happened and they left.
Yeah. For sure.
They were there for them through a funeral or a wedding.
Dang.
And then they left.
Baby.
That's what like all the things.
Just
like life things.
Offended by a sermon or because the relational dynamic changed.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
that's so crazy.
But I like what you said about the vulnerability thing. Because I think that's what happens. I think that guys or women, men, pastor wives or women pastors, they can be just as
cold, hard.
Yeah. I almost said bitter, but
it's your favorite word right now.
Yeah. Be better.
But I think both of them, whether male or female,
yeah.
Like they start to, I think they just start to try to protect themselves because they've been stabbed stabbed in the back so many times or how they perceived it. And so that there's this, instead of vulnerability, it's like, let me just stay strong.
Mm-hmm.
Let me just project strength as opposed to vulnerability.
Yeah.
And I get it in terms of trying to survive the onslaught of you don't know who's going to come. You don't.
Yeah.
We talked about it. So it's like, we just expect people to leave. And I'm like, man, that's such a negative way to look at life or ministry. But I get it. It's rational.
Yeah. It's because they're coming from a place of experience, right?
100%.
We're all very understanding to that. When you guys even heard it so many times and being around pastors or people, it's just like, dang, this is like real.
Yeah.
This is a real thing. But I would say it goes back to that statement that we've always said, and I don't know where I heard it from, but it's like trust is given, mistrust is unearned.
Yeah.
And that takes a lot of vulnerability. Yeah. That's literally how we've started Legacy, is like, okay, open hands. I have open hands, God. Mm-hmm. I'm trusting you. I think that the mistrust teaches you, but you don't have to close off.
No.
You just have to now, we'll do that differently. Yeah. Like, we'll do that differently this time.
Yeah.
I think too, because we're talking about what insight can we give people, right?
Yeah.
That have gone through this. And I think unfortunately, sometimes, at least, for us, we started off on the right foot because you guys led in that way. Mm-hmm. And I think that unfortunately, some people that do get burned by a pastor, a person, however that they want to view it, it's perception too, because what does that actually look like? And how did it get to that point?
Mm.
Yeah.
Because you guys led us in the way of giving us that vulnerability first. And then we knew, like, at the end of the day, we're here to protect each other also, protect each other's minds and hearts and like talk each other off ledges when someone does hurt you. Right. It's like there's not this culture of like, oh, someone hurt Pastor Justin, so let's all get him. No, let's put our perspective into place. Let's love on them, give them grace. Like there's the more grace you give, the more room there is for us to do this together. Yeah. Like not only are we friends in ministry, we're two couples in ministry.
That's like a double thing.
You're on the risk of offending both.
But again, this all started with the hard conversations of, hey, when one of you is, I don't even like to say like in trouble, when one of you messes up, you both didn't mess up. You can't always defend each other and cover each other. Mm-hmm. We're 4 separate people who love each other enough to call out the faults, like call out the tough decisions, but then cover with grace and fix it together and work through that together. And so I think a lot of people that do feel hurt or leave a church or whatever the case might be it's just, that's the easy way. It's like, it's easier than to actually fight through that and grow with the person.
Yeah.
So,
well, I was thinking about it just from the aspect of, it's been a crazy 5 months. 5 months.
I was like, 15. What?
No.
Almost year and a half. And there's been lots of learning moments. Like it's our first time leading a whole church that has grown really fast. And so we're learning, through error, the mistakes and things like that. And you guys are like, see those firsthand and also have your own. But as I talk to pastor friends, anytime someone's like, man, like you guys are crushing it, I'm looking at it like, yeah, because we're still friends with the people we started with.
Yeah.
Like, I think I think that's what's been good for us is the way we measure the success or the experience of legacy for us as pastors is not how many people come in, it's the people that have stayed.
Yeah.
And staying isn't even necessarily have to stay at the church, but in terms of the relationship.
As in relationship.
We started a church to be a reflection of the beauty of Christ. Christ is about relationship. Christ moved, he traveled, he did all those things. Like he wasn't in the same place doing ministry all the time, but the relationship.
Even people that have like left legacy, whether they moved or found a better suited church or whatever.
I was just thinking of like Craig and Letha, like love them.
Yeah.
They're so great. They still come visit us once in a while.
Yes.
But like they're an older couple that came and it was like, they were so gung-ho and they cried calling us, like telling us that they were going to leave. But it was such a beautiful thing because I love that they still text us, call us, and like and we still kept the relationship. Like we're like, we just want the relationship with you.
Yep.
It doesn't matter. And I think everybody listening needs to understand that too. As the leader, as the pastor, I think that I know I can say honestly, I can't speak for both of us, but I could say honestly, like if you two said like, God told us that we got to go and this is what God had to do, like I would be fully for you guys. Like I would be like,
it's like me.
For you guys. And just because of the fact that it's not this legacy is not the end all be all. Right. It wasn't about that. It's about doing what God has called you to do and being able to lead yourself and your family in that. And that's what it's about. So it's like, I think that comes a part of the maturity that we've started off with of just like knowing like at the end of the day, like legacy can go down in flames somehow, like just like, but at the end of the day, I remember looking at you guys before, I'm like, don't let anything come before your marriage, before you guys, like nothing. Like this.
You guys were always like, we would never forgive ourselves if something ever happened to you guys and your relationship with God or your relationship with each other. And like that, having that heart behind it has always just like encouraged us to continue pushing forward no matter how hard anything got, you know?
And I think where so much of the, I guess, success, we can say that. Like so far the success is the way that you guys have led that. And I think that's where this conversation gets tough to tell other people because they're not dealing with the same pastors we're dealing with.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think that's the hardest part because I don't know that there's other people we could have ever done this with or would have said yes to or are crazy enough to have us do this. Yeah. But I think that it's so important to know that because there are people that are just more difficult or that aren't for you. Like there are people that are like family can go down, friends can go down, but like this church will survive. And from the very beginning, you guys have been the exact opposite is we're doing this because God has asked us to do this. Yeah. But at the end of the day, people are more important than a building.
Yeah.
Well, I was just saying, I know we have to end here soon, but I think we're called regardless to love people and to extend grace to others, right? So I think that fixes a lot of the church hurt issues, like either by a pastor or the pastor from people. But we just want to honor you guys and just say thank you for leading faithfully and extending grace to us, knowing that we didn't have a background in ministry. I mean, besides my biblical studies minor, but
you got by default. I don't think
it was 100% by default. But I think we understand that we're in a special place, right? And we're super thankful for you guys, like not only as friends, but also as pastors. Like you guys have been incredible throughout this whole journey. Even, you seeing 1-star reviews and things like that on Google, you still keep your head high and go out there and preach a fire sermon. And no, we're just super thankful for you guys. And
you guys. And we got to wrap it up, but I just want to end with this. Anybody listening, man, I think at the end of the day, the success of a church is one was Jesus there?
100%. Yes,
100%.
And secondly, did it reflect the beauty of Christ in the relationship? Like that, I think the relational part has to be the priority.
Yep.
If you don't have any relationships in your own church,
and you're doing what are you doing?
Yeah.
Why? How's that your church?
It's good.
Maybe all churches were meant to start with friends.
I do. And they don't. And I think that's my last thing. It's so much more fun. Like every time I had somebody ask how's your, I'm like, I'm having so much fun.
Yeah.
Like, I'm doing my best. Friend.
Yeah.
And like, regardless of everything else that comes, and again, even if you, God forbid, y'all were to,
you're stressing him out over there.
Tragically,
I'd be able to shame like, well, our best friends are, you know what I mean? It's not Taylor and John. It's like our closest friend. You're just how can I champion them?
Yeah.
And I just want to encourage pastors, like, even if you've been hard, maybe you've been hard, soften your heart, and is you really find the joy of it is who you do it with.
Yeah.
And maybe
so good.
You're setting yourself up for misery or to endure something God could ask you to endure.
Yeah.
Because you lost the joy of relationships.
Yeah.
I have one more thing. Because, I'm hurrying up. Because I think it's, when we talk, it's like, who do you call when you want to celebrate something? And who do you call when like the hardest things come at life? And for us to be able to do that together and like the hardest things in life and ministry, we call the same people.
Yeah.
I think like you're saying, pastors that are listening, anything like that, take that chance again.
Yeah.
Just risk it one more time with the right people. It's the best thing that you're going to do.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, so another 15 months.
Yeah.
That's all you're giving us? A 15 months?
years.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, my bad. Well, I'm just holding with an open hand.
We'll do another podcast.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for having us on.
Yeah.
Yes, we love you guys.
Yeah.
And let's just keep love living and leading like Jesus.
Yep.
Amen.
And keeping our fish away from Kristen.